In this CBT Nugget planning for virtualization of Exchange, this is our third out of 3 and final virtualization video. Yay! So you're probably thinking to yourself, thank God I made it this far. We've had some great information so far on the planning and the design of getting Exchange and virtualization. A lot to do with the high availability, you know, the configuration needs that you need for your environment depending upon your scale. And we've even dug into some of the nuts and the bolts, the specifics of how you want to configure your virtualization and some of the ballpark numbers of configuring your VM, like its memory and its processing and that kind of stuff. Well, now we want to go a step further, and I'm going to say that this is kind of an introduction to using a very special piece of software, if you will, that we'll be using throughout the rest of this course and drilling deeper and deeper into. But well, let me just show you what we're going to be talking about. I know it looks like 2 bullets, but it's really only 1. What we want to do, I know you didn't really need me to. What we want to do is we're going to do an introduction to, and it's a big long name, the Exchange 2013 Server Role Requirements Calculator. Trust me, in a little bit I'll show you how long the name could have been. At least this is pretty. In other words, there's this great requirements calculator out there, and if you've been working with Exchange for a while, you may have already used it. Well, we're going to start working off with it again. Now, this calculator can be kind of complicated. The reason is that, well, a lot of time and effort has gone into making it really good, but it means that you've got to answer all of the questions, and there's a lot of questions and options to answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do an introduction to this, but we're going to do it with a virtualization spin. And that's what I kind of meant, is it's really one bulleted item. We're playing with the calculator. But we're going to do this based upon a virtualization environment and how we might use this to help us figure out the requirements for our VMs when we go to set this up. So tell you what, finally I get to use a computer even though I'm using a spreadsheet. I'll show you where to get this tool and we'll start working with this. Okay, notice we have a computer screen. Yay, finally. Well, yay, kind of, sort of finally. I was going to take you through just a quick run through on the role calculator, and I have it sitting over here. Let me just show you where to find that role calculator. Now, this is provided by the Exchange team, and I want to give you a couple of notes before we actually use this guy. I'm going to go to my favorite search engine. Yep, I drank the Kool-Aid. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just search on the Exchange 2013 role, and you can see there's other people looking for it, role calculator. And here's where it's released, and then you can get the latest download. Now I'm using version 6 is the latest when I had done this. But I just want to go here. Here's where they were talking about the release of it. And you may have known this by an older name called the Mailbox Server Role Calculator. But I want to point out, and I know it's really small on my screen, so maybe I can make this bigger because I want you to see this statement that they have here. I think this is an important statement. It says, originally marketing wanted to brand it as the Microsoft Exchange Server 2013 Client Access and Mailbox Server Roles Theoretical Capacity Planning Calculator On-Premises Edition. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of them going out and playing with this idea. You got to love marketing. But it's simply the server role requirements calculator now. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the reason that they were kind of so anal about this title is, yeah, it does the server roles, so client access and mailbox roles. But I want to point out this part, theoretical capacity planning calculator, and this is for on-premises. So there's 2 parts here. One, this is a modeling tool. This should not be regarded as the absolute thing in the world. It's a modeling tool for you to work with. And I have to tell you, it's a very complicated modeling tool. You're going to want to take a look at the release notes on how to work with it, all that kind of stuff. Throughout this entire course, don't panic. I'll be showing you working with it, just kind of like we're starting right now. I'll show you a little bit. You know, I was even thinking of maybe doing, and you tell me if you think that this will be helpful, I was even thinking of maybe doing just one video, a real short, quick one on the ins and outs of using this thing. But at any rate, the other thing I want to point out is that it's the on-premises edition. What this means is this is for your on-premises Exchange physical or virtualized implementation. And you'll see you have the option to choose whether you want it to be physical or virtual. The reason that you, by the way, will be choosing virtual is because we want to leave a little extra room for that host machine. We want to leave him a gig or two of RAM, and give him about 10% of the processing too for the host machine. So it does matter whether it's physical or virtual. But this is on-premises version is different than if you were using Exchange Online. As a matter of fact, one of the things, I just have to say this because we're going to talk about Exchange Online in this course. There's an awful lot of stuff I don't have to worry about if we were on Exchange Online. If you and I were on Exchange Online right now, boy, there's a lot of stuff we don't have to talk about, and this would be one of them. I think I pointed it out during the high availability. We don't have to deal with high availability. We don't have to deal with disaster recovery, and we wouldn't have to have this conversation either. So when we get to Exchange Online, we'll talk about that. It might be something that you want to start to think about. At any rate, that's not why we're here. We're here to look at this server role calculator. So I've got my version is currently version 6. And I just want to tell you, every single time they update this, they'll give you a long list of what they changed. So depending upon what version you have, it may look a little bit different than mine. You're going to maybe see some different options, that kind of stuff. So let's launch this guy and take a look at him. I'm going to bring him up in Excel, and I'll scroll to the very top here. And now we'll take a look at the Exchange Server Roles Requirements Calculator in a simple version. The instructions at the top will kind of guide you on a little bit on what you're going to do. Filling in the variables. The red variables have drop downs, that kind of thing. I want you to notice across the bottom here are the different tabs. You want to start with the input tab. Now let me just give you kind of a warning. I'm not going to go through every single little thing right now. We're just going to hit a couple of the main ones. But as I go down through here, I just want to tell you, you don't want to lie to this thing. You don't want to lie to it. If you don't know the answer, you need to figure the answer out before you start throwing values in here. Because if you lie to it, guess what you're going to get as a result? Yep, it's going to lie right back to you. And also, I've got this kind of zoomed in. Hopefully you can see this well enough. And I'm going to have to move back and forth. Move back and, oops, that wasn't very nice. Move back and forth here so you can see both sides of it. I'm going to try to do it so I don't make you dizzy. That kind of thing. And here's what we're going to do is we're just going to do a little virtualization planning for a medium-sized company. I'm just going to put in some simple numbers right now and a couple of things that I want to show you. So first of all, we're going to be using, this is Global Catalog Server Architecture, yep, 64-bit. In other words, my domain controller is 64-bit. Now, the next question is are you going to be doing a multi-role configuration? In other words, CAS and Mailbox are on the same VM, or are they going to be separate? Now, in real life, answer this correctly. I'm going to say no. I actually do like to separate my roles. And have them separate. And notice this next one. Are you going to do role virtualization? And it pops up and it tells you, it kind of gives you some information. It tells you right here what I had just mentioned a couple minutes ago, that you can expect an additional 10% CPU overhead, and this will help calculate that out for you if you're going to do virtualization. Well, this whole module's on, this whole video has been on virtualization, so let's say yes. Now, I'm going to scroll over here for a second because I want you to see that it talks about site resilience. Now, we did site resilience in the last video, and you can have it start to figure out your site resilience to help you figure out the hardware and the amount of DAGs and databases and that you need. Right now, for this, I'm just going to turn off the site resilience. We'll just say no. Notice it all kind of grays out. I'll go back over. And now let's take a look at we'll do high availability deployment, which means we're going to use DAGs. Right now for this simple situation, I could say no, but in real life, I'm always going to do high availability. The reason you have the option for this, you might be saying, well, why would I even, this will always be yes. No, not necessarily. You might only want to use your virtualization platform's high availability features. Did I slow down and say that? Did I say that right? Yeah. You only want to use your virtualization platforms. So if that were the case, you could set this to no. Now notice it's going to get rid of this thing down here called the number of, DAGs because you're not using DAGs, and it's going to get rid of the lag copy information. Right now, let's go ahead and leave it as no, but if you turn it back on, then you need to tell him, well, how many DAGs are you going to put into this? So, is it going to be one DAG, two DAG, how many DAGs is this going to be? For right now, just to kind of show you that this calculator does work, let's keep this pretty simple. The number of mailbox servers, I'm anticipating having 4. So let me just put in 4 mailbox servers to see what that'll look like. And let's scroll down here. There's a couple of things I want you to see. Let's see. Now it's going to ask you things like, and it'll put in some default values. You just kind of want to check some of this to make sure it's real. Mailbox moves, during the week. What's the percentage? I'm going to do about 1% of mailbox moves. Now look, if you know that you're transitioning, or if you are going to be realigning your databases quite a bit, you might need to increase this number quite a bit. So, they give you all of the options so they can calculate them. Now, an I/O overhead factor, it already put in 20% for me because of my virtualization. And I'm going to scroll down here. There's something I want you to see. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. Looky. Tier 1 user mailbox configuration. Now, it says a total number of user mailboxes. I'm going to use a relatively small number because I was saying like a medium size, maybe a small size. So let's put in, I don't know. Let's put in like, you want to use, let's put in 2,000. Yeah, let's put in 2,000. Now, here's where you can also start to factor in, remember that user profile that we were talking about. So this has information on things that you can get from Perfmon, things that you can get from Operations Manager, or they may be things if you're doing a brand new implementation you may have to kind of swag at, although I'm pretty sure you probably already have an Exchange implementation going anyways where we can drag that information out. You want to make sure that you kind of fill this in as accurately as possible. So things like, what's the percentage of your projected growth size? What's the total send and receive messages a day? And right now I'm just going to leave this at 200, but you can see we get different message sizes for send and receive, all the way down to that smaller profile that I was using earlier. Let's say we got, medium size. Yeah, medium size. We'll do the 200 messages. Average message size. Again, all this information you can pull out of your environment. What's your maximum mailbox size? Well, let's cut this down a little bit. Let's just say that instead of, it's in megabytes, so instead of 10 gig, let's just cut it down to about 5 here, just for fun. And do you have archiving? What's your archiving limit? What's your, looky, remember how we were saying that your deleted item retention, single item recovery stuff will affect, here's your 14-day window. It'll help calculate this stuff out for you so that you don't have to, guess. I kind of like this calculator quite a bit. And we can go through the rest of it. Now, if you have multiple tiers, it lets you fill this out. I only have, very simple environment. We can go through, how are you going to do your backups, that kind of stuff. At this point, I've really kind of filled out most of the stuff that I want to fill out just to show you. You can go down and specify your disk types. Remember we talked about disk speed and how that'll affect it? There is one other thing, though. Where is it I wanted to show you? I have found it. So how many guest machines am I going to want to run for this? And for my guest machines, I said I was going to do 4, right? So I'm going to do 4 guest machines. And I want to show you this number over here. This is kind of a weird thing that tripped me up for a while. So I don't need to worry about lag copies, but I'm going to have 4 guest machines. My hypervisor CPU adjustment is at 10%. That was that warning message that we got if you were going to use virtualization. You could adjust this value. But I want to point something out to you on this guest machine. Take a look here, this spec rate value. Boy, I got to tell you, this threw me off first time I saw it. I even had to ask, what the devil is a spec? Do you know that there is a place that will help you figure out what your performance rating of your hardware is? And this is what we're looking for, is what your CPU rating value would be. Now you're saying, well, my guest machines, well, it's going to be based on whatever hardware my host system has. And as a matter, and how many cores you're going to be using. And the cores that I've decided to use for my guest machines over here, how many cores? I'm going to use 4. So So what I need to do is go out and find out what that spec value rating is, and let me just show you where you can get this. It's kind of strange. It's www.spec.org, and they have ratings, performance ratings for a lot of things. And if you look down this list, wow, look at all of this stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to CPU and just kind of show you an idea of how to use this, because your hardware is going to be different. So the spec CPU 2006 published results is what this is a particular setting is looking for. And I can go through this list and look at available results. Here's the spec int 2006 speed. And what you do is you go over here and look at your cores. You find your cores and you find your results, and you can put your results in there. And what did I do? I chose 4. Now notice to the left here, it's your hardware manufacturer and the type of the processor. So you can really drill down on details here on what your performance is going to be by specifying exactly what kind of hardware do I have and how many cores am I going to enable, and how's that going to look. So I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to make up, I'm going to choose the first thing I'm seeing on the list. I probably would scroll down to the Dell section or HP section in real life, but I said 4. So for this particular, oh, it's a Xenon box. Okay, that's, wow, that's kicking. But let's see here. Well, I said I'd drill down to Dell, so let's go down to Dell. Here's a Power Edge 2900. Remember these days? So 4 cores and 25.6 sounds good. So we'll go to set a spec value of 25.6. Let's just do 26. It's close enough. And like I said, your hypervisor adjustment value is in here. Well, at this point, you can actually start, since you're putting in numbers, you can actually start to look at now these tabs. And if we were doing things like with the DAGs and all of that, it'll start to show you DAG layouts, the whole kit and caboodle, all of which we'll show you more about as we go through. But here's just a simple example. We'll go to the role requirement. He comes up here and he says, okay, let's see here. Recommended minimum number of global catalog cores, 6. Comes up, recommended minimum number of client access cores, 4. RAM, 8 gig. Okay, so it's going through and it's giving me the specs that I might be using. Number of mailboxes already specified was 2,000. So it's kind of going through and now detailing out, using the specifications that I've given it, what I could start to look at. Number of mailboxes and databases, so 36. Let's see here, user mailbox size within the database. We said it was going to be around 5 gig. Gives me about the number of transaction logs per day, the IOPS required for that to get a good, for that profile, to get good performance out of it. Oh, come on, that's important, because now you can see what your disks or your storage is actually supplying you. So on a per user basis or on a per mailbox basis. So it goes through and it calculates everything out for you. And this is really cool. Number of databases total on the server, 14. I'm getting red because there were a couple of things that I may not have calculated, I didn't fill in the numbers for, kind of stuff, but it gives you an idea of what a basic, in this case, server configuration would look like. How you might want to set up the storage, because I did not specify. There was an option on there that I could have said I want to use JBOD. I didn't, so I'm specifying RAID. So you can take some time and go through this and try this out for yourself. Use your own numbers. And here's what I recommend. Start off with something small that you know. Maybe even using our ballpark numbers, but something relatively small like, I've got a couple hundred users and they've got 10 gig mailboxes, and compare that to your actual environment, or compare that to an environment that is small in scale that you understand, and then try it out for your environment and see how it calculates. Now, like I said, this is just an introduction to getting started on this. Again, a couple of the primary things is don't lie in the input section, because if you don't tell it, it's going to make boo-boos for you. There's a lot of things this guy will calculate for you as you go through here and look at it. Everything from your redundancy to, as I flip through them, your replication, storage design, all of this stuff, backup requirements, Tons and tons of stuff that it can help you calculate. And keep in mind that this is just a modeling tool to give you an idea. A lot of guys take their existing hardware, plug the existing information with their existing performance, and see how they're doing to see if they need to make any changes to their environment or if their performance may be bottlenecked because of some of the decisions that they've made. So it's a great way to get started. And by the way, you don't have to remember, take a look at that spec number. It tells you right here. There's where you go, spec.org, to get that spec number. So you don't have to memorize that I showed you that website. So this is a good start to this calculator. Not everything that we've done, but a good start to it. Later on, we'll show you more, and we'll play more and more with this calculator. And so this is just, like I said, a good modeling tool. Wow, as you can see, that tool can get complicated really quick, but I think we did a pretty nice job of taking some virtualization ideas and doing a nice introduction on the server role requirements calculator. Like I said, we're going to be using it throughout the rest of the course as well, so we'll get deeper and deeper into it. Might even do just an entire video, just really jamming down into that bad boy. However, I want to point out, I want you to notice that it took us a long road to get here. It took us a lot of information and a lot of conversations. Tools are great, but only if you know what to do with them when they're in your hands. And so think back to the rest of the virtualization videos that we were looking at. You know, we were going through the pros and the cons of virtualization, but then we started digging into the Hyper-V setup for it and how Hyper-V would help us and the requirements for Exchange and the performance for Exchange. We needed all of that information. What our high availability is going to be, if you think back through the rest of the previous portion of the entire series so far, all of that high availability information just to be able to come up to start making decisions to use this tool. So it's a lot of information, I know. Yes, I do know. It's a lot of information, but I think you will find that as the more you work with the role requirements calculator, it can be very helpful to you in your planning and your designing. Remember, it's not an absolute, and Microsoft makes no guarantees, but it's pretty doggone good calculator, I think. So once again, I hope this video has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.